Welcome to The Productive Attorney. This is the podcast where we talk about how attorneys can be more productive so they can go on and do things outside of their practice that they enjoy. So more productive in your practice so you get to enjoy more outside of your practice. Today we're going to be talking about something that's kind of come up recently in my practice, and that is Barratry. Barratry is illegally and unlawfully soliciting clients for attorneys. Most time you think it's in personal injury cases, but it's not just personal injury cases. This applies all across the board. It can apply to big firms and small firms, transactional lawyers. Any kind of lawyer is subject to the penalties for committing Barratry, and that's something you don't want to do. As you know, most of the time in these podcasts, I start out with a story, something that's happened recently. And recently, one of my legal assistants was in an automobile accident. And he was not at fault in the automobile accident, but his name was only listed as the owner of the vehicle, and the police report got the name of the individual who was hurt, which was my legal assistant. They put some other random name in there. So all my legal assistant's name down was as the owner of the vehicle. The police report comes out. It's only been out a couple days, and he receives 3 direct solicitations in those 3 days, trying to get him to hire an attorney. The first one, the pitch was, we have lawyers that we use. We are not a law firm. We are just an agency that helps find people get lawyers. And we are going to go ahead and get you a lawyer that instead of charging the 40% that most of these lawyers charge, we will get you 25% or 33%. That's their pitch. In this particular case, my legal assistant did not try and find out who the attorney was. He tried a little bit, but they kind of pushed back on him, and he didn't do with it. Although in that case, they did give him a website of their company, which I'll talk about in a little bit. The second one was a individual that called him, and again, they called him on his phone, on his cell phone, and this is just a mere matter of less than a week after the accident, just 48 hours after the police report comes out. And they tell him that they'll set him up with a lawyer. Their pitch is, we'll set up your lawyer, we'll set you up with a medical provider, we'll get you a rental, we'll negotiate your property damage on your vehicle. All that we ask is that you hire the attorney that we refer and that you go see a medical provider at least one time, and that medical provider, we will give you that information. Again, he went ahead and tried to find out who the lawyer or the medical provider was. They did not tell him. Instead, they gave him another website, which again was a static website, just a placeholder website. That's kind of scary because these folks are now giving you medical advice to go see a doctor when you may or may not need it. Also, I've found that clients can negotiate their property damage much better than you because they know their car. They don't really want you taking a fee off your car, and you just sit there to help them, and if necessary, you bring it in the lawsuit. But 95% of the time, clients satisfactorily negotiate their own property damage claims. The third one, which to me was the most troubling, was there was a phone call from a solicitor from a company, and they said that would he be interested in hiring an attorney? He said he might be, and they gave him a hot transfer directly to a law firm. So in that case, it was a phone call that directly solicited the client and then gave a hot transfer. Once again, he asked for their name of their company, and they gave it to him, and they had a static website. So what's the reason? What's going on? That appears to be exactly what Barratry is about. That appears to be exactly what the disciplinary rules are supposed to prevent. But under Texas, and that's where I'm in, is Texas, and I'm sure it has it in other jurisdictions, under the law there, the disciplinary rules allow for internet lead generation. That's the term that's used. And so what is intended by that term is that people have active websites that they go out, and an individual is looking for an attorney, and they find a website from a lead generator. They go to that website, they make an inquiry, the lead generator then comes back and talks to them, and if it works out, then they can go ahead and pass them on to an attorney. That's the way that's supposed to work. What these companies have done, the 3 that contacted my legal assistant have done, is they've created these static websites so they can argue that they're an internet lead generation company. They're a lead generation company that's on the internet, but they're not what's intended by the disciplinary rules. I remember there was a picture of an egg that got like 20 million likes. These websites are like a picture of an egg. You could have a picture of an egg. That is not an internet lead generation service. An egg is not that, just because they're on the internet. So in my opinion, that is Barratry. But again, it's gray. It's a gray area because there's been no cases that have come out on it. And since it's such a gray area, it's very difficult for me as an attorney to go ahead and report these lawyers, because I do have a duty on the disciplinary rules if I know of a sure violation of the rules. But this is in such a gray area because that internet lead generation, that I don't feel obligated to do so, but it sure is disturbing. And I'll let you know, Barratry happens all the time. I had a case in which a lady lost her husband in a shooting. There was some liability from the premises where he was shot. She was directly solicited. There is an attorney in our area who handles Barratry claims. It's not the only thing that attorney handles, but they do handle those claims. I contact that lawyer. He asked me to ask my client to record a conversation. Texas is a one-party state, so she could record the conversation without the other person knowing. Ask them to have those people come to her, tell them who they're with, get that information, and if we had that information, then he would take the case and he would sue them on our behalf. In that particular case, my client was grieving and just simply did not want to go through that stress of that process, which is completely understandable. So that's another instance that happened in my practice. A third thing that happened is I was at breakfast and another lawyer came in who I knew very well. And he said, "Hey, Jim, look at this." And he pulls up Google Maps, and right across the street from where we are, the internet shows that there's a generically named accident law firm, personal injury accident law firm. But it happens to be where a hamburger place is. And what he had discovered was if you go on Google Maps, there were about 30 or 40 of these generic names that had been put on Google Maps, and they had phone numbers that you could call. There weren't really any websites. They were just generic names and phone numbers. And if you call those phone numbers, which we did, you would get hot transferred over to law firms. And so these were another form of internet lead generation services. What we found, and I particularly remember there was one law firm that was in a field, and it was just nothing but an acre of field that they had a name for a law firm. Very sophisticated too. We found about 4 months after they started, and we knew it was 4 months because they had started putting in fake reviews for these fake law firms, and they even had owners giving fake responses to the fake reviews. This attorney and I reported this conduct to Google, and Google shut down all of those sites. When they come back up, we're going to have to do whack-a-mole and shut them down. Not before, though, I found out who one of these lawyers were through calling the number and just asking who is the law firm that you want to refer cases to, and they hot transferred me to a firm. I wrote a letter to the law firm and got responses from their marketing director, got responses from the husband of the attorney that was involved, never spoke directly to the attorney, and they all had defenses as, hey, it's internet lead generation, we didn't know, etc., etc. I will say that I tried again in 2 or 3 months, and that same person received that hot transfer. So again, gray area, internet lead service, but Google was the one that helped us in that particular case. So if you're an attorney and you're saying, well, if I do Barratry, what's the punishment for Barratry? In Texas, at least, the punishment is strong. You can lose your license, so you lose your ability to make a living in all the law school and the bar exam that you went to. It is a criminal offense, so you can be criminally charged, prosecuted, convicted. You forfeit any fees you make on a case in which you went ahead and improperly solicited a client. So a client can wait till the end of the case, and then when the case is done, the client can say, "Oh, you improperly solicited me. You forfeit your fees." And the law is real clear. Plus, for each time that there's Barratry that's proven, there's a $10,000 fine against you or a $10,000 award against you in favor of the person that you committed Barratry against. Plus, they get their attorney's fees per violation. But there are very few of these cases brought. And so the question of that is why? Well, one problem is you can't find the people who are committing Barratry. The second problem is if you do find the lawyers who are getting the leads, you find that those lawyers are saying, I didn't know. I had no idea. I'll stop the process. It was totally a mistake. And you want to report somebody because of that. And if they said they're trying to fix it and it was a good faith mistake and they read the disciplinary rules and it was okay, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to be known as the lawyer who rats out other lawyers? So it's not very often that you find these cases being filed, not very often that you find criminal charges in these cases, but it's out there and it's happening every day. There was a recent case that came out of the United States Fifth Circuit by a gentleman, I believe his name was Mr. Wiley. Mr. Wiley decided that he was going to go ahead and commit Barratry out in the open and ask for permission and forgiveness. And so what he did was he was a criminal defense attorney, a private criminal defense attorney, and he felt that in Harris County, Texas, where Houston is, that the criminal defendants in that county were not getting a fair shake when they had public defenders, that the public defenders were overworked and underpaid, which is the case in many cases, that they didn't give enough attention to their clients. And therefore, because he felt duty-bound as an attorney that they weren't getting proper representation, he felt he should represent them. And so what he did was, and he decided he was going to do some of these pro se, so he wasn't going to make any money doing it, but he wanted to show that he could do a better job than the public defender. And I don't know what his true motivation was, but that's what happened in the case. He actually had 2 forms for the clients to fill out. One saying, I hereby want to have this person come in instead of the public defender. And the second one was like a very long questionnaire about everything about the case. Again, he would find these names and he would go to these criminal defendants and solicit them. And in some cases, they would go with him. Well, he proactively sued the Harris County District Attorney's Office, arguing that he needed an injunction to allow him to continue to do what he wanted to do. He argued that it was a freedom of speech deal. And so the United States Fifth Circuit, his preliminary injunction was denied, and they told him, stop it, don't do that. I know you're telling us what you're doing, but just stop doing what you're doing. He took it up to the United States Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and it really was a constitutional opinion. Constitutional law opinion. It talked about freedom of speech. It talked about all these other issues related to whether he could or could not do it. But they finally came down to it and said, no, you can't do it. You can't do that. You don't get freedom of speech to commit Barratry, and it doesn't work. And they upheld the lower court's decision not to grant the injunction in that particular case. So this guy was going ahead and just wanting to commit Barratry out in the open. There's another example of a case that the people did get in trouble. There was an individual whose relatives owned funeral homes, and he was getting some cases from those funeral homes. Young lawyer, new lawyer out, and got some cases and made some money. He went ahead and set up a company whose job was to go to other funeral homes. So this company was an intermediary. They would go to funeral home conventions, have these booths, and say that what they do is this. We will go ahead and we will make sure that the customer that comes in gets a free funeral. In other words, we, this company, will pay for this client's funeral and will pay you funeral home, but the customer doesn't have to pay, we'll pay it. But in consideration of paying for that funeral, you refer them to us, and then we refer them to attorneys. And so the money would flow like this. Money would come from the law firm to this intermediary company. The intermediary company would then pay for the funeral. In exchange, the client would flow from the funeral company to the intermediary company back to the lawyer. The lawyer would then hire, typically because he's a young lawyer, he would hire more competent lawyers and more experienced lawyers to handle the case, and he would refer those cases to them but keep a co-counsel fee. So then the lawyers who got the co-counsel fee, who got their case, would litigate the case, get a large settlement. That settlement would be split between the lawyers who handled the case and the lawyer who sent the case over. that lawyer would then go ahead and give money downstream to the company that did it, and they would then go ahead and give additional money to the funeral home. And so a law firm figured this out. A defense firm figured this out. And they went after everybody in the chain. They went at, the young lawyer was brazen. He went out and started advertising the settlements that he'd received, advertising the verdicts that his more sophisticated lawyers had gotten and he was co-counsel on. He had billboards. He just felt like he could rule the world, until a law firm was trying to figure out, how did this young lawyer just coming out of school get all these great cases? And then they stumbled upon this company that was doing this work with these funeral homes. They were able to bring a lawsuit against this lawyer, and I believe the case ultimately settled, but it was a big case. And not only did they go after the lawyer, they went after the company that was the intermediary company, but they also went after the lawyers who got the cases. And as somebody who gets cases from other attorneys, it's a challenge to investigate too deeply where the attorney got the case that's giving it to you. And the challenge is because that attorney who's giving you the case can say, I don't want you digging too deep into it because you're trying to find my referral source. It's a legal referral source and it's ethical, but why wouldn't you just cut me out? Why wouldn't you figure out who that source is, cut them a better deal, cut me out, because all I'm doing is getting the case. So I don't feel comfortable giving you all my marketing secrets and tell you who I come from. But you, as an attorney who's getting those referred cases, you do have a responsibility to ask that lawyer generally where it came from. And then when the plaintiffs come in, you have a duty to talk to them and say, okay, how did you find this other lawyer? How did you find us? And if you find out at any time that there's a problem, you need to kick the case. As much as you don't like to, as the attorney who gets the case, you've got to kick the case back. That happens in anything, transactional, in big firm stuff. If the case is toxic and it's tainted when it comes to you and you jump on it, you're covered in the same slime that it had when it came to you, even though you did not commit the Barratry at the time. So be careful about that. Do a little investigation into what it comes. Really what it comes down to this. Number one, you know in your heart when you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. And what I have found in my 30 years of practice and having deposed many people who have been involved in financial crimes and other issues, it always starts small. An employee will use a company credit card to buy gas, and nobody notices. So the employee then buys a pair of shoes, and then the employee goes on a trip, and next thing you know, they've embezzled $500,000 from a company. In this Barratry type stuff, you get a good case from an internet lead generation service that you paid $1,000 a lead for, or $500 a lead for qualified leads. And you end up making $5,000 or $10,000 off that case. And you don't question where that case came from, and you don't ask your client how they found you through this internet lead generation. You just feel like it's a good case, it's a solid case. It's a case that you got a fair settlement for the client. You represented the client well. Hey, let's go back and recreate this. Let's let it go again. I can always argue internet lead generation, and then people start to get greedy and they increase that marketing up and up. Just like the funeral home, the guy got one from his relatives and then set up his own company to get more. It always starts small and gets bigger. If you think at any time that the cases that you get are tainted, you need to, like a cancer, you need to cut them out of your practice. It hurts financially, it'll hurt you short term, but long term, it's the best thing. It lets you put your head down at night. So that's Barratry in a nutshell. Those are some lessons that I've learned in 30 years of doing it. My advice to you is don't do it. Have a great day. Thanks for listening. Bye.